Welcome, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have a motion to approve the agenda for the budget meeting of February 28th, 2022?
Duncan and Eric, thank you.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we have the presentation and the discussion on the program component. So I am going to you guys are going to be presenting, so I'm basically going to turn it over to you. Thank you very much. I'm like, what does it say? No, okay. Sorry about that. So with that, further ado, please welcome everyone.
Okay, hello everybody. Today we are presenting our program part of the budget. So right now for the 21-22 approved budget that we're working in, it's $32,886,167. In the beginning of January, we presented to you guys the rollover budget for the 22-23 school year, which was at $33,398,872. Sorry, an increase of $512,705, or 1.56% increase from the budget that we are currently in. So over the course of the few weeks in between, I've received the budget requests from everybody. And right now we're looking for at a 22-23 preliminary budget of $33,685,615, which is an increase of $286,743, or 0.87% increase since the rollover budget. This also is an increase of $799,448, or 2.43% from the budget that we are in now. Now Tammy will talk about the adjustments that have been made since the rollover budget.
Okay, so we wanted to highlight some of the larger areas of the increases to the budget. So the first item is BOCES Services. So what Janet did for her rollover budget is we always project 3%. So since that time, Janet has received all of the firm numbers from Questar 3 BOCES. So those have been put in the budget. We're still waiting for BOCES that we contract out with, which are Albany BOCES and a couple other ones. So those will be, they're still at the 3% range, and they will be adjusted when we get those actual amounts. The second item we have listed here is Occupational Therapy. And Brooke's going to share a little bit more of this when it gets to her slide, but right now we've added one additional day, 7 hours. Under Communication Specialist, so this is something we've talked about for years. In fact, we had it many, many years ago, and it did not survive some budget cuts in our leaner years. But that we can't communicate enough both externally and internally, and it's just been a real need for this district for a very long time. So we will try to do our best, but there's definitely a communication lag or gap sometimes. So I actually had a conversation with Mike, and right now the school district that he works with, they contract out 2 days a week with a communication specialist from Questar 3. He doesn't feel like that's quite enough, that it would have to be at least 3. So what we've actually put in the budget is really what we think will be enough to look at either contracting out a couple of days with BOCES or hiring within. And then I would leave that recommendation up to Mike of what would best help him with this district. So just to let you know that that is in the budget. The next item is additional clerical hours. So this is another thing that we have actually talked about for many years at the administrative level. We have 4 administrators that do not have clerical support. They do beg, borrow, and have help from building secretaries, which has worked well, but there's also a lot that they are still doing themselves, which takes away obviously from some administrative work. So what we've been looking at is in reviewing existing staff, there is a part-time clerk that we're looking, if we added 3 hours for that to become a full-time position, that would help fill in that gap of some of those clerical hours that are needed. So that is something that we added. Our next one is increase the interfund transfer to capital. So this is actually, we're going to talk in more depth next week because the capital component is next week and Rich will be talking about specifics. But as the facilities committee, we've met for the last few months really with the architects and in reviewing the building conditions survey to talk about things that are needed. And of course, we've been working on that next capital project. But there's really one item that kind of stood out as something we may really need to do a little sooner rather than later. And that is the dust collector in the high school wood shop. So we've increased this from $190,000, so that was our annual budget rate then, to $380 to look to make that happen out of the general fund. Right now, it's very old. The engineer has never quite seen anything like it, is what they've said, and it's inside the wood shop. It really belongs on the outside, the exterior of the building, to be working properly. So this is twofold. So by putting this money in now and raising this, what we're doing is looking to the future. So with the federal stimulus money, we've talked about the things that we've put in that we're using that we know are going to end in 3 years. And we've talked about those positions, for example, a speech pathologist and a social worker, that we want to start planning to make sure we have that money in the budget. So by putting this increase now, this would give us a 2-year window to be able to do that, some of that extra capital work we need. But in that year that federal stimulus money disappears, you've already put this much more in the budget that you can now direct that right to the salaries without worrying about that cliff. So that's something we've been looking at, is how do we protect the district and keep the positions that we've put in. So that is in the budget. The next is retirement replacement breakage. We always look at this. This year we had 7. At this point, 7 individuals retire, and that breakage is $292,370. So that's a savings to the budget. And then our last item on this sheet is health insurance premiums. So for the rollover budget, Janet used 7% estimate. So based on the Health Insurance Trust budget projections that they released to each district, we lowered the medical portion to 2% and we lowered the prescription drug portion to 4.1%. We're expecting actual rates either this week or next week at the latest. So we will see if it stays true to their budget or if it changes at all. But those adjustments have been made. So that's my page.
Okay, so the administrators are going to start presenting all these different bullet points that are in the slides. So now I'll turn it over to Todd.
All right, good evening, everybody. Before we get into the specifics of the different areas of the budget, we always like to start with our district goals. So this is my area of always reminding us and grounding all the work that we do as an administrative team in those district goals. So we have them here, I'm not going to read them, but the quick reminder, when you think about the 3 district goals, goal 1 is really everything related to curriculum and what happens in our classrooms around academics and instruction. Goal 2 is our culture goal and what our community in the school is like. And then goal 3 is the community being the larger community of Greenville and how we incorporate that into what we do as a school. So we always keep that as the foundation of all the conversations that we have as an administrative team around the budget development. And you'll see tonight as we present, as we've done in recent years, we're not looking at this like Pete presenting for the elementary school, Brian presenting for the middle school, Christy for the high school. This is really, we are presenting as a united pre-K through 12 team, looking at all the areas that we look at as part of the budget. So with that, I will turn it over to Matt to talk about enrollment.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here. Taking a look at our district enrollment numbers, we're presenting our current enrollment alongside our proposed enrollment for the 22-23 school year. So what you see is the numbers in the current 21-22 column. It's a snapshot of our enrollment taken on Beds Day, which occurs in October. It's an opportunity, among other things, to gather enrollment figures. The figures in the proposed for 22-23 column are anticipated figures for next year based on our numbers as they stood at the end of January. So as you can see, we are anticipating to remain relatively consistent with our enrollment projections. It's important to note, as you see on there, our homeschool population has grown considerably since the 1920 school year. The projected 22-23 figure is based on an informal survey of our current homeschool families and who might be returning. The figures you see here are the most current numbers and may be different than those in your supporting documents, but any adjustments can be found on the supplemental sheet. Additional supporting documents can be found on pages 2 through 4. Brooke, to speak about some special ed?
When
You want
just
the questions
that,
as we go along, or would you like us to wait to the end?
I would ask questions as you go along.
Okay, I'd like to understand the dramatic increase in athletic participation.
Because as you know, Duncan, the athletics for last year was kind of limited. So some of our programs didn't run because of COVID. I think some kids did not participate, and therefore this year they're coming back up to normal. And
Okay.
actually they've increased since prior to COVID.
So if we look back, let's say 18-19, it would be closer to 500 than 400.
But
If we look back at 18-19, it would be closer to 500 than 400.
yes,
Okay, thank you.
And I just had a question regarding the homeschool population. So if we were to see more students actually come back to school, then I guess my question is the impact on the budget in the sense of the population that is homeschooled, then obviously they're not part of our community, or no, they're not part of the school beds number, which is then linked to funding. So if we were to get more of the homeschool population to come back to school, then I'm assuming that that would be positive?
Jenna, could you speak to that?
I believe that the 88 students are spread among many grades, so we will be able to absorb as many, if all 88 came back, we will be able to absorb it in the instruction that we have now, because it's not like one grade level, it's spread out.
Okay. And then the timing on, we just did a survey, would we go out and do another survey now as the environment is changing? Then we might have families that would reconsider.
That was one part of the survey, and some of the feedback we received is that, if circumstances are to change, we might be returning, but we'll have to take a look at it. So we know that, looking back to 1920, we have a core set of families, that 53 number there, that we would not anticipate returning. Folks who were never homeschooled to begin with, folks who were never in person here in Greenville Central Schools with us. We wouldn't anticipate those folks returning. However, we have seen since March 2020, as you all can see, an increase. And as of when the informal survey was done, about 3 weeks ago, we only had 2 families said that they intended to return. And we would, with circumstances changing, it's possible that there could be more returning.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question, Matt.
Yeah.
So the increase in homeschool population, is that like kind of spread evenly across the schools, or is it a larger concentration in one school or the other?
I believe that it is spread relatively evenly throughout K-12.
Okay, thanks. Also, one other question. The enrollment for 6 to 8 looks like it's dropping by 23. Some of that might just be shifting to the high school, but is there anything in particular accounting for that? Is it the shift to high school, homeschooling, something else?
And then the cohort that's coming into 6th grade is really small. I think it's 80, 79 or 80, so it's a lot lower. Typically we're high 80s, low 90s. So there's definitely a drop in that 5th grade cohort come to 6th grade, and then there's a larger 8th grade cohort that's about 90-ish going to 9th grade. So it's just it dropped. You have the 7th going into 8th dropping a little bit from the current ones, and then 5th coming into 6th. So
Yeah, so the bubble moving through the system, and then a smaller group coming in behind them.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
No problem.
And then for the special ed numbers, excuse me, we have a large incoming population of preschool students coming to kindergarten that are coming in with needing services through special education. So that's where you see that about 18 more students coming in on that timeline there.
As long as we're talking, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay, nothing, go ahead.
As long as we're talking special ed, do you anticipate more kids needing an IEP based on the last couple of years? Or,
Well, it depends, yes and no.
Okay.
So, I mean, I know with special ed, it's never a clear cut, because our numbers are forever changing based on the needs of the kids. Currently coming in, we do have a larger population of preschool students needing services, more so than we've had in previous years. And I do attribute some of that towards, you know, coming out of the pandemic. Some of these students haven't really been able to get the services that they have needed, or they just, I mean, a 2 and a 3-year-old have a hard time doing remote learning. So there were skills that were lost there. But other students that are coming up that are school-age students, they are going through the RTI process with Matt and his teams. And if they are not meeting, you know, if they're not making progress through the tiers, then by all means, then they get referred to us. So we've had some, yes, newly referred to special ed, and or kids that were already classified, we've had to add some additional services in. So
this is not specifically related to these numbers, but how, based on percentage or any way you want to illustrate it, how often do we have students get off of the need for an IEP and back into what I'll just call the general population?
We call it declassification.
Yeah.
We have, and I can get you those exact numbers.
Yeah,
but yes,
we don't
do
need
have
them now.
students.
I'd be interested to see over time whether that's changed.
Yeah.
Whether
It
you
primarily
attribute
happens.
changes to the program
Yeah.
which had a, you know, either a detrimental or a positive effect.
It primarily happens in the older grades, because our ultimate goal anytime a child receives an IEP is to look at what supports are they needing, and how can we scaffold that support and get them basically to be independent and be able to manage their academics on their own. So a lot of times as we start seeing students in their 11th and 12th grade year, that's where you'll see the most declassification, because they have already, you know, progressed through all those supports, and they're we declassify them and do away with the IEP, or they have the lowest level of support that you could have on an IEP, which is an indirect level of service.
Just trying to give you a nice way to do your homework as a new superintendent, okay, as a special ed background.
I know.
Okay,
I'm excited about that.
good.
Were your initial question concerning learning loss?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we've seen that, or whether it's too early to
Yes.
even understand that, but.
We have seen it, and we've come, for kids that have an IEP already, we come back to committee and we look to see what compensatory services we can put in place. And that's where the after-school, some kids are receiving after-school support with tutoring, and or we're looking at for like a related services such as speech or OT or whatever. We've increased those services to help.
I'd be interested in seeing just kind of an overview.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I have a quick question, Brooke. With the 18 preschool age kids coming in needing more support, or rather coming to special education, if we'll get to this later in the presentation, fine, but does the budget reflect an increase in that need? In other words, do you need more resources, whatever that might mean, in order to address that need? And is that fully
Yeah,
reflected in
so-
the budget?
And I will touch on it a little bit later, but as far as impacting the budget, that's where I'm going to talk about the need for the occupational therapy service, adding that additional day. But also too, in what we currently have in being creative with our special ed teachers, here it's going to look like I'm going to have, at the elementary school, have to reinstate one of our self-contained classes to accommodate that need. So whereas last year we dropped down to 2 self-contained classes at the elementary school, next year we're going to have to increase that to 3 so we can accommodate that need.
Okay. And all that will let you accommodate this need without diverting resources from the
I'm
higher...
trying to utilize the resources that we have so it's not a significant impact on the budget, but recognizing the fact that we do need some more support through the occupational therapy, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Okay, thanks. Just want to make sure, one, that the, that it is reflected like you said, and also that it's not, I trust that you're not, well, never mind. I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
So the technology lines in the budget are driven by these goals, and they have been for the last several years.
Again, it's providing the tools for both teachers and for students. We have had a push the last few years to move to more cloud-based applications to utilize our, our student population of one-to-one devices and so forth. More recently, you'll see in the budget we've really looked to move toward cooperative purchasing with a lot of these software-based applications, either through the NARIC or through Questar, really for 2 reasons. One, because we want to maximize our state aid. Certainly, cost is always a driving factor. But also, they've been doing the vetting for Ed Law 2D compliancy, and we want to try to jump on that wherever we can, so that they do that work for us. So our long-range equipment plan, this is really just a snapshot of our large technology purchases. This is probably the biggest purchase we make during the year, and we plan this out for several years. You'll see that, for the 22-23 school year, we're going to be buying for kindergarten, 4th grade, 9th grade, as well as any of the desktop workstations in the offices, as well as the admin laptops will be replaced next year. And again, we rotate through these on a 4-year cycle, and that's what that colorful chart attempts to show to you. Any questions on that? All right, the next page is really, this is just the dollars behind that colorful chart, and it tries to at least give you a sense of the impact on the budget. We try to keep that impact as low as possible so we're not having spikes up and down every budget year. And again, we leverage several 4-year lease purchases through Questar to maximize our state aid and to keep that up and down in the budget as low as possible. And that's what that chart really indicates. You can see the several different lease purchases that we have going on simultaneously in their individual payments. Again, that's the biggest chunk of the technology budget. There are other items that come into play, and you can see that on this page. The equipment line, this is a state-aided line, and we, again, try to maximize that so we get our maximum state aid. This is really equipment that doesn't fall under the lease purchase that we purchased through Questar. This is miscellaneous stuff like printers and projectors and things that I have to replace that aren't considered one-to-one or a laptop replacement. You'll see the contractual and software lines are both showing a decrease, and really the main reason for this is we're moving those software applications where we can into the BOCES Services line, and just again, for the reasons I explained, getting a little bit better state aid funding for that and a little better service. And then you'll see materials and supplies are unchanged. Any questions on technology overall?
I just had a question where we hear in the past year about schools kind of being the targets of cyber attacks and everything. Do we have enough in the budget to prevent it from happening for us? And I guess that's my question.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'll say no system is 100%, right? We do the best we can with the dollars that we have. Having said that, though, we have transitioned this last year to a NERIC anti-malware, antivirus, scanning type of software that's much more robust than the solution we were using in the past. It really targets these the malicious malware attacks, that can, the ransomware type stuff. Again, not 100%, but it's much more robust than the system we were using. We're getting that in place, and then we also have planned with some of the federal stimulus money to take that to the next level after that all gets in place. So yes, we are moving in that direction for a more secure environment. And it's not just you don't just buy one piece of software and it does everything. There's firewalls, there's the NERIC does stuff for us, we do stuff on site, software gets installed on all the machines. There's lots of different pieces to that, but it's something we're constantly trying to be vigilant about. And we try to do what's best practice, what the NERIC recommends, because they actually have a very good cybersecurity team.
Thank you.
So the short answer to that question was
Yes.
yes, the money's in there. I'm sorry.
Nothing wrong with the long answer.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right, back to me. So we continue to maintain a high level of standards for all of our students, K-12, that receive special ed services, and we continue to make sure that our IEPs are meeting and students' needs and matching the New York State learning standards. On this slide, we break out the tuition. So you'll notice here that there is a decrease of the monies needed for tuition based on we have 2 students who are aging out of an out-of-district placement program. So they're turning 21 at the end of this school year, and so therefore you'll see a savings for now. Because like I say, as special ed's ever changing based on the needs of the students. So.
In terms of equipment requests, you can see this year there's a slight increase of dollars at the middle school and at the high school. The expense at the elementary are typically things like our music department every year, kind of on a rotating basis, looks to replace some of the different instruments they have to keep here at school for students to use because there's too large to transport back and forth, like the elementary schools looking for a tuba next year. Those are just difficult things for students to transfer back and forth, but they do wear out over years of students using them. Also, the music department, middle school, high school is looking for like a music stand rack. If you've seen our music stand space is at a premium here in our building here, and so a music stand rack will allow things to just be organized better rather than just kind of shoved and pushed aside at times. And then from our another purchase that's kind of both jointly, that's why there's an increase both in middle school and high school, is in our CTE program and ag class at the high school. So there's our CTE 6 ag and tech and CTE 8 ag classes. They're looking to purchase a vinyl printer cutter. We currently have a vinyl cutter, but a vinyl printer cutter will allow more use for our students. Really will make more of their projects and presentations come alive in the CTE classes. A lot of this is students designing things on a computer and then having this thing either print them, so they're going to be able to start printing posters for things like now. And our ag department CT classes do a lot of projects and presentations where students are speaking, and so again, just allowing some of their projects and presentations to become more alive. And again, that's a joint purchase because of our shared staff in the departments. And then also, they're looking at, one of our ag classes looking at a swine litter processing simulator, which is for our ag classes, our pre-vet, our science classes. And again, we're always ask our departments to, what are definitely needs in terms of things wearing out, but also how can we enhance some of our programs. And I know one of our ag teachers, when she was at the FFA convention this year, national convention, was able to see a demonstration of this, and it's more of a hands-on thing where students will be able to actually, I asked her for a little more description today, practice common livestock management of animals, and this will be with pigs. So it's pretty cool. She was very excited about it. So again, trying to continue to enhance our great ag program that our teachers already do with a purchase for that. And then in terms of another increase, our nurses' offices, every year they have certain grade levels they have to do, ear, eye checks and listening checks, and the auto meter in the office, middle school, high school office is fairly old. And although it still works, we also talked about the fact of, okay, is it as accurate as it should be or not? It's like I said, we're looking at over a decade or more old in terms of something here. So this was something we looked at for them. And then from the PPS standpoint, the increase there, you can hop in on this, but really is just for any unforeseen student needs. So again, trying to, although there's not an increase there, I know PPS department finds this is utilized of unexpected students that might enroll in the summer, or we may find some more needs with some of these new kindergarten students coming in.
Primarily for
Adaptive equipment.
Thank you.
tools that are
Yep.
needed for students with disabilities.
Any questions there before contractual requests? So again, just also though, a big thank you to our department and teams as they really do take a hard look at things of just more really, what do they really need to keep the programs that we have in place going strong, but also is there some ways that we could potentially enhance it some years? So kudos to our staff for really taking a hard look at things from a budget standpoint there. With contractual requests, you can see a slight increase at the elementary level. This is really just, in talking to Mr. Mahan, there's definitely, the request for that budget line has remained fairly stagnant over the past few years, and just, we're definitely seeing a little bit of a cost of inflation with some of these programs. And then also there's a slight increase in the ESGI software that's used K-1 for reading and math, and teachers are able to do online assessments and really get some quick real-time student data. So there's just a slight increase with that this year. And then at the high school level, and kind of middle school, high school really, over the past couple of years, we've actually increased the graduation costs in terms of doing some events outside and things like that. So there was just a need to, as we've had to rent some different equipment over the years, to have an increase there to be prepared. And then Brooke, do you want to talk real quick about that?
Yeah. So this is where you're going to see that increase for the occupational therapy need. And basically what we're needing, what we would like to do with the needs that are coming in, not only into kindergarten, but at the primary level, is we're finding that the instruction needs to be modified in some different ways. And when I talk about being modified, some of the students are coming in and the sensory integration piece, which then plays into some of our behavioral things that we're seeing with kids leaving the classroom, with needing some extra sensory support while sitting and helping learn how to focus, which all fall under the umbrella of our zones of regulation that we've talked about before. That coupled with handwriting support, as well as ADL support, that's assisted daily living support, with some students at those primary grades have trouble with zippers, their shoes, even holding a pencil or a marker. So by really looking at this additional time and structuring it in a way that, similar to some of our other centers, how we have our speech and language therapists push into the classroom and provide centers to help with the language support, we were looking at doing the same thing with occupational therapy and having that therapist actually go into the classroom and do a center, not only working with the teacher, but then working with all the students in the class and providing to, and just so that all students would get that additional support, and therefore help reduce maybe some of the troubling behaviors of some of the students that may not necessarily qualify for special ed instruction, but need that sensory support. So that's where you're seeing the increase there.
Brooke, what percentage of that major increase is due to the occupational therapy increase?
So,
Sorry about that. The percentage of the students coming in, or what are you, I'm not sure if I understand.
There's an increase of 27,000.
Right, so
And
that
you said
is,
part of that is the occupational therapy. Did I understand an increase of one day a week?
it's 7 hours.
7
Duncan,
hours.
7 hours.
And do you have any idea what that actual cost is annualized?
I'm going to have to defer that to Janet.
It's alive.
The document that you gave me, Janet, it's 22,900.
So it is by far the major
Yes.
portion of that, which I figured it was, 22, okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. We got the number, I don't care who gives it to me.
okay. Okay. Good evening. So materials and supplies are really the nuts and bolts of the tools that teachers use instructionally day in and day out. And supplies are defined as individual items that cost under $1,000. So you can have a large item that's still considered a supply, but it's not equipment if it's under $1,000. And as I said, these are the everyday tools that classroom teachers use to provide instruction for students. So, for example, standard supplies that we order each year, whether it's pens, paper, paper clips, all those items, they fit underneath this category. It's also the items that we purchase to replace what gets consumed that's not necessarily consumable, i.e. broken Unifix cubes, or items that just through wear and tear, you replace them on a regular basis as you inventory what's needed in your instructional program, and those items get factored in. In other years, a teacher might find, like, I found a really great organizational tool that really helps their students, and they might decide as a grade level team or a department that they really want all students to use a particular item that is not something that we're going to ask parents to buy, but something we want to have for them at school. All of these are the things that are categorized as supplies. At Ellis, there's a slight adjustment due to, one, the number of sections per grade level and the inclusion of our UPK program. Since we talked last year, we've added a UPK program in our building. We need to make sure that we're putting supplies in that classroom as well, so that will account for something that's happening at the elementary level. But also at the middle school, you'll see that although there's no fluctuation in the amount of dollars that are needed, they are anticipating that in the coming year, or this budget year, that they're going to direct more attention to the science and CTE program for some supplies that they need. At the high school level, you'll notice that there are some additions, and these are things to address an increased need for art supplies, or for home and careers, and for the technology program. So you'll see some fluctuations in these items, and that accounts for the difference this coming year within this code. Any questions regarding supplies and materials? Thank you.
Okay, so I'm up next with textbook and classroom library requests. As you can see, our budget line for the elementary, middle school, and high school has all increased for next school year. There's a couple different reasons for this. Consumables are what most teachers are using now instead of textbooks. And consumables need to be purchased year after year. So the example I'd like at the elementary level with Pete, the cursive writing and the practicing the print, that is something that you can't reuse the following year for a different set of students. So it's a consumable, it's something that's purchased year after year. At the middle school, I know the 8th grade math group, they under budgeted for textbooks this past school or this current school year. So the increase is due to that for next school year. At the high school, again, a lot of it is the consumables. If you've ever seen one of the math textbooks or consumable books, they're spiral bound, they're pretty thick. We also have one of our ag teachers is requesting 2 new ag textbooks, and I believe Daphne has the 2 textbooks so that you guys can look through it. Hopefully those will get approved for next school year. Also, really great reading is used at every building. You heard about that earlier this year as well too, and that has also been budgeted into the textbook and classroom library request. Any questions on this slide?
Yeah, I want to understand the note.
The district must spend.
Yeah,
So Janet, can you explain that part?
So we get textbook aid,
I understand.
so as long as we spend $64,000, then we will be able to then get our aid back.
That's great. Are we going to do it?
Oh, yes.
Oh. Then I don't understand why it's here. Why does it show up here?
So you can see how much we're spending in textbooks compared to the textbook aid. So we're anticipating on spending more on textbooks than we get in aid.
So that way you know that we're going to get $64,000 back from state aid under
Oh,
textbooks.
I misread that then. I thought we were spending 64,000. We get 100% back?
No, we get 64,000 state aid.
Okay.
So that's how much the aid is that we're going to receive. So we have to at least spend that much to maximize. So if we spend 50,000, we would only get 50,000. But the total we can get is 64,000 based on our enrollment.
All right. So in the coming year, the one we're talking about in this budget, as long as we spent that 64, we will get 64 of that 97?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So, question about the consumables.
Yes.
If I understand, excuse me, in the elementary schools, they're consumable or have to be replaced because the students are writing on them. Is that right? Yes. How about in the high school?
Yeah, it's the same, so,
The same?
Yep, I know for most of our math classes, they have, it's a huge spiral bound book. It actually looks like it could be just like a paperback book, but when you open it, it's a consumable. It's just a workbook that the students take their notes in. They practice in there, they have homework in there, they do practice for tests. Everything's in there minus the tests. I think quizzes actually might be in there as well too.
Okay. And are there textbooks that students have electronically where you have an annual license fee instead, or do you not do that?
I think we do, but I'm not sure exactly which departments have that. Todd, do you know, Betty?
So we do have some. One I know off the top of my head, business class. There's a specific program that's used for accounting that students are on the computer. It's the textbook, it's the accounting software, it's all a package that we purchased that for the past 4 or 5 years. So there are some like that specific to courses that are already built into that annual amount. I don't know of any new ones that are asking for that piece.
Okay.
But we do have departments too that use the old-fashioned hard-covered textbooks as well too.
And I would hope those last multiple years, right?
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so that brings us to our BOCES Services slide. So this one, I'm going to mention from the very beginning at the bottom, it says supporting document pages 9 through 11. So there are a lot of different areas that go into this category of BOCES Services. Just a couple of them are listed on the slide. So this includes all of our graduation pathways when we have students that go to CTE programs. For example, if they go to the HVAC program at Questar, they go to the culinary, all those different graduation pathway programs are included in this number. One of the areas of increase, because you will see there's an 11% increase in this area. One of the big reasons for that increase is our 5-year average. So we pay a 5-year average for the number of students over 5 years that are in those programs. Our 5-year average from this year to next year is increasing because in recent years we've had more students attending those programs. So for that reason, that average is going up, so next year we will be paying a higher amount to cover our students that are in those programs. Others, just mention a couple, Nature's Classroom. So that's a program at the elementary school that we have students participate every year. There is a portion of that cost that shows up in our budget that's in this area because we're able to put it through BOCES and we get aid back on it. Our science kits at the elementary school, another example, we have the kits that are used K through 5. Those are actually replenished and refurbished over the summer, so we send them out to a BOCES, they go through every single kit and replenish them, and they come back and they're ready for use on the first day of school. So again, a wide variety of things go into this category of BOCES services. One other that I'll mention at the bottom of the list up there, No Red Ink. That's an additional expense for next year. That is an online resource that our English teachers at the middle school and high school are looking to start using actually now until the end of this year. and we're using some grant funds in the area of school improvement to purchase it for this year. As long as those teachers find it productive and efficient, we were looking to include it in the budget next year so that we can continue that service. It is a service that's offered through BOCES, so again, it shows up in this area, but that is a new expense that did not exist in the past. So again, the supporting documents really has a further breakdown of all the different category, or all the different areas that go into this category. It's just kind of the highlights of some of those and some of the ones that are driving that increase.
Todd, I just have a question. On the back of it says the STEM high school. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that is? I probably know it as a different name.
Yeah, so Questar started these last year. This year is the first year we have students attending. I'm looking at Tammy to make sure I'm correct in my years. So Questar, one that people are more familiar with is Tech Valley High School, because that's been around for quite a while now. That is a program that students have the opportunity to go to. We have a certain number of seats that we've designated as a district that students can attend Tech Valley High School for their high school career. Questar started several new programs. Again, this is the first year that students are in those programs. One is the STEM high school, and the other is the early college. I forget the exact name of it. There's two different new ones that this is the first year. So looking to continue the opportunity for a certain number of students to attend those different programs are also included in this area.
And I guess how is it different from, let's say, Tech Valley? And you can get back to me.
That's a good, it's a good question. Each one has kind of areas that they specialize in. I can get you some specific information, because those two that are new this year, I could talk to you all day about Tech Valley because I'm familiar with it and because there's a history and we've done work with them. The other two are a little different, each one kind of specializing, but I can get some more specific, what they use to promote it for their students, absolutely.
And we already have kids who are interested?
We have currently 3 students attending it,
All right.
so we put another 2 more in.
I
It's
have one.
for computer information systems, engineering, and environmental science, and health sciences. That's the STEM high school. It's located at UAlbany and at Hudson Valley Community College.
Thank you.
I have a do we have any kids in the heavy equipment program?
We do, yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah. And that's actually, Duncan, that's a good question. That's part of the reason our 5-year average is increasing, because that program started
3 years ago.
3 years ago, and we've had students attending each of those 3 years, and actually this year that number went up, so that is one of those reasons that 5-year average is up, because there's a new program that we've been sending students to for the past 3 years.
I'd be interested in kind of a summary overview of how we perceive the value of that particular program. To me, when it started off, it sounded great, but I literally haven't heard a darn thing since.
Yeah.
Okay?
We can do an update, sure.
Yeah, we get just kind of a one-page overview. That'd be great.
I have on the STEM high school, can you, also I know you're going to share some information, what the selection process or what the requirements are in order to be accepted into the program?
Yes, I can get all that. I don't know it off the top of my head. Brian, no, the new STEM program.
Yeah, there's no requirements, and it's a lottery, so anyone can apply for it. And then it's a lottery based on how many the district can afford to send. So it's not an unlimited amount. So just like Tech Valley, we usually choose 1 student each year so that there's 4 kids in it. And if there's 3 kids, they pick the lottery. The lottery does not happen on our site, but the lottery is picked by like Tech Valley, and they'll pull the name, and that is the student that it's offered to first.
And usually what they ask also is the student before they can even apply, that they actually do there's different parent-student visits they will schedule. Along with that, they be able to apply, and there also has to be like a recommendation from the counselor of the school.
One more question, Todd.
Yeah.
How many students do we have participating? There's a lot here, and I know some of them are popular, but just have no sense of the numbers.
In which program? In the Tech Valley STEM high school, or your? In all of them.
All of it, really. I mean, 5-year average and then all of it. I realize you probably don't have, the information now, but I'd just be curious to know.
For 22-23, the 5-year average is 41.6 students. For 21-22 school year, we had 47 students enrolled in the CTE program, 4 enrolled in Tech Valley, and 2 in New Visions. BARD program, we have 1. STEM program, we have 3.
Janet, what
Okay.
page is that?
On page 10 and 11 of the booklet.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Tim.
Ms. Denise.
So for athletics, this pretty much remains the same. We have 33 overall sports teams. We've got 41 paid coaching positions. That's modified JV, varsity, and also our assistant coaches. We have 12 overall athletic programs that we offer, and they're all listed up there. We continue at Greenville, very proud of our coaching staff and our kids to be very competitive at the conference level, to be competitive at sectionals, and also to have students participating at regional and state levels in some of our teams. So this year, I would say our teams came out on fire, and they still are, and they're doing great. As far as the budget goes, not a great amount of differences in the budget. For physical education, we do not need, or there's not a need for equipment, so you're going to see a decrease there. Contractual, those expenses there are again at the high school level for snowshoes, skis, bikes, and so forth. And again, a very minimal at the materials and supplies level. Athletics, this year hasn't changed a lot. Again, the equipment that you see there is for replacement of fitness center equipment or adding of fitness center equipment. Right now we have a need for more cardio machines in there for the classes, so that's where the focus has been. Contractual, you're going to see increases in contractual because the section actually did, officials, they did negotiations with the officials contract, and the spring costs for the spring officials went up because when they looked at other surrounding sections around us, we were very low in that area, so you see increases because of that. Materials and supplies, not a drastic increase. And the BOCES services you see there, Janet actually, I think, did this, but that's for our family ID registration that we do. Schedule Galaxy, which is our scheduling platform, and Huddle Services, where Huddle is a program that they use in basketball for breaking down film.
I think on it, it talks about unified, and if I remember correctly, we didn't have it last year. Are we going to be able to bring it back?
I would like to see if we could do that, but right now we're just, again, having troubles finding somebody to coach it.
Duncan, did you have a question?
I did. When you talked about contractual, you talked about replacing equipment, snowshoes, skis, etc.
That's for services, like if we need to
So we rent
have a
them?
repair
That
or
stuff-
that kind of stuff, that's for
It's,
contractual.
they're all rented?
We have the supplies here. at the
Okay,
school.
so we have the supplies and this is just to maintain them?
Yes,
Okay, thank
exactly.
you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about transportation. As it is right now, our buses travel approximately 1,700 miles per day, covering approximately 135 square miles. So we go pretty far every day. Very far, actually. We're a huge district. We have about 1,141 students that were transferred at this time. This slide shows a wide variety of routes, both during the summer and throughout the school year, to meet their varied needs. Some are in-house, while others are contracted. And twice during the year, we communicate with other neighboring districts to see if there's possible intermunicipal agreements where which of these we could be transporting or they could be transporting so that there's a shared bill cost. Transportation updates. This year has been very challenging to say the least. We have 4 open routes. 2 of the routes I have temporarily absorbed into other routes just so that we can make it work every day. We have 1 new driver in training, which I'm really happy about. Since January of 2021, though, we've lost 14 drivers, either due to the pandemic, resignations, retirements. We also have a new ELDT federal program. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration implemented this. It creates another step in the training process. So each level has to be approved before we can move on. It's a little bit more stringent, so they made it a little bit tougher for us to actually push drivers through to get their CDL Class B license. Late buses. Late buses, we started out with 6 routes in October and since have reduced to 5 routes. On the average weekly ridership over the course of the last 19 weeks has been about 22 students a week. Monday being the least or 0, drivers will go up to the circle, have no one, and park. Our total average trip mileage is about 26.6. So if they were to go out, that's about what we're averaging. I think Tammy wants to talk a little bit more.
Can I ask a question about the late buses? Have we played around with the time a little bit to see if changing it slightly later to accommodate the athletic schedules would actually, what the impact would be on ridership?
We have not played around with the timing schedules yet.
So this might not be the year to do it given everything that's going on, but maybe just in the back of your mind. So once we have the influx of all these transportation drivers.
Yeah.
Theoretically. Hey, I'm an optimist.
We line up at 4:10 right now for a 4:15 leave. So moving forward.
We have thought about a late bus a little later, but then we have the issue of supervision because a lot of things end at 4 o'clock or at 4:15. So, and then we don't have the supervision between 4 and 4:30, which then would be more money.
And how long is the driver training? Or asked differently, for the driver in training, how long until maybe their past training can just be?
How long does it take to train a driver?
And how much longer does this driver in training have?
It's approximately 30 hours. It depends on the person, obviously, how quickly they can move through the steps and catch on to everything that they need to do and master before they can go get their CDL license. It's us that have more steps, not them, so the process is the same, except for we just need to move through it through the federal motor carrier instead of just doing the basics like we would normally do and set them up for a road test. So it has to be approved at the levels, and then they approve us to get the road test. And it has to be within a certain amount of time, or they kick it back, or they cancel it. So, and it just started on February 2nd, so we don't have anyone actually doing it. But when we get a new driver, we'll have to do that. Yes,
Can you explain ELDT? What does it stand?
It's the entry-level driver training.
Entry-level driver training.
Yes, sir.
So this is above and beyond what the state requires to get a CDL with a bus endorsement?
This is the federal level.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It's above and beyond?
Yes, sir.
The feds come in and review?
The feds can audit
or
you
is
at
it
any point in
incorporated
time.
into the state?
The feds can come in and audit you at any time, so we have to keep very good paperwork track. So it has to all be kept together. So at any point, yes, they can take it and look at it. We have to make sure we follow.
Can you give me one example of what it basically layered on top of what you did before?
It's the computer process of moving through so everything that we normally do to train someone, we do at our own steps. We have a whole, a section on it. So they added more stuff to it that we had to create a brand new training process because we had to add like really weird stuff. Like it's so strange how many things they put on for like CDL drivers that are not school bus drivers. So we have to know about cargo. We have to know about cargo. We have to talk to them about cargo and securing loads and all of that kind of thing. So it added a little bit more, and it just made the steps so that we really make sure that we get it together before we send them for the road test.
I retired from New York State to go and work for the feds, going out reviewing the CDL programs for all the states. And it was crazy, but up until, this is the first time I heard where the feds literally come in and look at it.
They can at any point.
I mean, yeah, your local could come in anytime.
Correct.
But the way I understood you to say it, this is something that they basically do above and beyond the state.
Yes. Yes, everybody has to do it now. It's been implemented.
Okay. Crazy.
So just a little bit for the late bus. So Janet has calculated it's about $37,000 is what the cost is in our current budget. So it's something that we do need to keep our eyes on. You know, we did eliminate it during hard budget times in the past, and it really was, besides the savings was needed, the ridership was low back then too. So we really need to keep our eyes. I mean, you asked if we could wait. I definitely see the cons to that, but other reasons, like if we have no one on Mondays, should we be offering it on Mondays? And I think we really need to get a survey out for the students. Will they use it ever, or is it just that they have a ride home and they don't need it? Versus what is keeping kids? Are they not staying after school when they should? Because that was our main purpose, is we have after school help, and of course we have the clubs for the social piece that the students need. But if they're not, and if they don't need that specific cost, then it can be used for something else. So I would just encourage that that's something we need to keep our eye on, is that ridership, and is that the value of that money worth it?
I guess my thing is kind of catch-22. If the timing isn't convenient, then we don't have the ridership. So as with everything, it's a balancing act, and I'm not sure what the answer is. So, but that was just from what I've heard in speaking to parents, the time is a weird time because athletics isn't finished. It's not even after-school activity. You have to leave early for after-school activity, was my understanding.
My understanding, it's in time for clubs and for extra school help.
I thought extra school help went to 4:30, so, for that, so.
4 o'clock. 3 to 4.
Okay, all right. So someone had said 4:30, and so that the students had to leave early to get the 4:15 bus.
No, it's specifically for that after school help and clubs.
Okay, all right.
And would we leave that ridership if we did it later?
When we talked about this for athletics, they would have to leave early, because most of them would be, the practices were modified, and I would think that you would get more ridership at the modified level, and right around 4:30. So you would have to leave 15 minutes early to catch a bus. Most of the parents, I think, for athletics realize that they're picking up their kids. I'm not sure that it would increase that much for athletics, even if it was later, but I don't know that.
Right, I guess my question would be, are there any students that aren't able to participate in modified because they can't get a ride? That's the group that could benefit, so I don't know what that is. And you're right, I must have been thinking about the athletics as what, not the after-school help. So again, I don't think we necessarily have a solution. It's just kind of a balancing act of if one of our goals with the school is to try to engage students, and we know that through athletics, after school activities, as well as the students that need the academic support, then let's just ensure that we can help, that we can achieve it, is I guess where I was questioning.
Mary, back to the late bus, if you're running 5 buses?
Right now, yes.
So, and if there's one kid that's going on one route, they take him out.
Yes.
There's any thought to combining those onto 1 or 2 buses on a given day?
When we develop,
or would that be difficult?
Well, the drivers have already been awarded them, So they already,
Okay.
they already have that late bus run.
Right.
So in the future, we could think about combining and reducing how many late
Yeah.
buses we have. But it was meant to cover the vast region that we have and get to all points to make sure that we were accommodating whoever needed a ride home, so.
Yeah, my other thought was maybe go 3 days instead of 5 days, but that eliminates sports because they run practice or games 5 days a week. I wondered if you could run, we would have to change after-school help, but you know, if you ran a bus specifically for after-school help, and then another bus later to go along with what Tracy was saying as far as timing, not 10 routes, you know, not 5 routes twice, but to figure it out, because one of the complaints I've always heard is that kids, before we instituted the late bus again, is kids wouldn't stay after for help because they had no way home. Although they really needed to stay after, and they probably were willing to stay after. But if you don't, no one's gonna walk to Rensselaerville from Greenville.
I wouldn't want to walk home.
And then, especially in the winter, right, you wouldn't make it.
We do have drop-off points right now. That's what we're trying to get to every single piece of the region so that it gives an opportunity for whoever needs to stay after, that they can. If one child is riding, we do accommodate, obviously, and say, hey, where you live, you know, let's drive,
Yeah.
you know, to the, we're not gonna drop them off at the drop-off point, but reducing is probably, would make a lot more sense at this point, because a lot of buses are either having one child or maybe 3 on a good day, 5.
Yeah.
And a lot of them park, and you don't have anybody.
On your driver shortage, and you combined those routes, how long did that stretch out those routes?
How long did they stretch out?
You know, obviously, if you're gonna combine routes, they're gonna be running the bus for, somebody's gonna be sitting on the bus for a longer period of time, right?
Actually, yeah, a
Worked
little
out
bit, but
better?
not as much as you would think.
Excellent.
So basically what I did was I take a route and it doesn't just get split over one, it gets split over the course of. So there are multiple routes that take on the responsibility of those extra students.
Very good.
So
But if you get drivers-
Everybody's on the bus for a very, very, very long time now.
If you get drivers, you're gonna split those up.
Oh, well, absolutely, we will be returning to. This is an emergency,
Well, I know.
temporary situation
Well-
that, we're doing the best that we can to make sure that everybody gets a ride to school and in a timely fashion, to
Yeah.
the best of our ability. So,
Thank you.
yeah, a lot of parents have been driving too.
I know
So
that.
that's definitely changed.
I mentioned that last, one other meeting, but the traffic outside the elementary school is phenomenal. And Angela mentioned it's because parents aren't putting their kids on the bus.
We do have a lot of ridership though still.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so that's good.
That would be a good piece of information to put on a report, would be, you know, the percentage of kids in attendance, how many kids are on here.
We're actually riding.
Yeah.
So the bus purchases, we're gonna talk a little bit in the next slide as our long-range replacement time is scheduled for 22-23 school year. So we asked the voters in a separate proposition to approve the purchase of 8 large buses and 2 vans. All new buses and van purchases will include air conditioning. 2 of the buses have lower storage compartments, which are single. And one of the 2 vans will be equipped with a wheelchair. The next bus purchase, as seen in Group 4, will be in the 24-25 school year, where there'll be 7 buses and 3 vans will be replaced. And the district's ratio aid is 71.9%, and the borrowing term is 5 years.
Quick question, with interest rates going up, with bond rates going, did we adjust it in the budget?
I have received from our fiscal advisors what they think the estimates will be, and I have put that into this budget.
Okay, thanks. I'm assuming they're higher.
They've always been very conservative. We've always come in
Right.
lower than they've projected, so.
Yeah. I guess I worry about what inflation is running at right now. So even being conservative, are we conservative enough, I guess, that's all.
Well, our rates are usually not affected as much because of the municipal bonding that is done, and it's tax-free on the London part, so it makes a difference. We're usually pretty good at it.
So for our vans, we're looking to purchase microbirds. This is a change from our current vendor, Leonard Sales, who sells bluebirds. The recommendation comes from our head mechanic, Kenny Scarlata, and it is based on quality issues that we've been having with bus bodies, which continue to show early rusting and rotting due to our weather conditions. So there's fiberglass panels and superior finishes on these. There's dual lift doors for the wheelchair van, which is supposed to reduce noise and air and interior housings and acrylic paint. It was amazing. We actually had a couple of them come out and do like a test drive, so we got to drive them, and they're really nice. So they have a lot of strengths. They have roll cage features, superior body quality. Our new wheelchair bus is going to see 21 children and 15 adults, and they can house 3 wheelchairs. And the single wheel bus will see 19 children. So we're excited to make this change. They have a great view. They have deadening floor panels that are a lot different than what we have right now. You can actually hear people talking, and for special needs students on a small bus, it's important sometimes that they don't have that extra noise, and it was great.
Can I just add something? So one of the things that what Mary's showing is really significant. When we've had a student who uses a wheelchair at the elementary level, one of the things that's very distressing for a teacher is if they're going on a field trip, that you can't send many friends with that child on the bus. And so to be able to have all this seating for a student who uses a wheelchair is a very positive thing. It could allow half their class to be with them while they're traveling, and that's not a small difference.
Transportation requests, on this slide you'll see various increases and decreases. We have a slight decrease, so we had to purchase a new tire machine that was 14 years old, so that needed to be replaced. We have software and maintenance fees. They have an increase due to a bus maintenance program that the mechanics use that had become obsolete, so we moved forward with TransFinder, which is what we do our routing system with. The component that makes DEF, which is diesel exhaust fluid, has become really hard to find. So the price per barrel has gone up quite significantly, and these buses, the newer buses, use a lot more of the diesel exhaust fuel than the older buses. So that's difficult for us right now as far as prices. Tires that were previously used also have been discontinued, so we're using a new tire brand that has increased as well. There are many pieces of equipment that we also take care of for buildings and grounds and the general maintenance of, so the price of the parts has increased along with availability. Everything has gone up in price, and it's very hard to find. Fuel prices are on the rise. I don't believe BOCES has put in an actual pricing yet. We're still waiting for that. And drug and alcohol testing remains the same. And Janet can tell you about contractual.
And the contractual transportation, that is the, when we have to send a child to out of district, that has been decreased because we do have those 2 students that are aging out. So of course that brings that part down.
I have a couple of questions, Mary. First, what is diesel exhaust fluid?
It's called DEF. It's diesel exhaust fluid. It needs to be put in all of the buses, just like you would do your own personal vehicle. It burns through it, so it keeps it from burning clean, so that you don't have any clogging or engine component problems.
Okay. And with increasing fuel costs, I don't remember, is there any way to, I
any contractual option to try, like, hedge against increasing costs in the future? I mean, I think, or even, for example, if I remember correctly, on electricity for the school, you were part of a larger buying group, right, to get better pricing. I mean, is there any option like that for fuel?
I believe the BOCES bid is the actual pricing that is, it is comparable to.
Okay.
They give you the best deal.
Okay.
We're in process right now. We're waiting for the BOCES to come up and finish their bidding process. So hopefully within the next few weeks, I'll have those numbers for you. I will be able to tell you price per gallon differences.
Okay. Then last question, the microgrid buses, I mean, I hear all positives and that sounds good, but how does the price compare on a per bus basis?
I would have to refer to Janet because I'm not exactly sure how much the last bands were, so we can get that information to you, but I don't have it right now.
Okay.
How much the last band purchase was in the last cycle.
Okay.
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Sure. Thanks.
I'm going to ask.
Actually, I'm sorry, Duncan, just a quick follow-up. Recognizing with inflation, I mean, the cost might be up more anyway, so.
And air conditioning.
Okay.
Because right now we're buying all the buses with air conditioning because we're trying to get the whole fleet with air conditioning. So that is going to be a big cost difference.
Okay. I guess the point is, you know, I might see a big increase, but there could be other factors than just, you know, different brands. Just can distinguish that. Thank you.
And also, wouldn't we have what's, if those buses are used especially with special ed, some of the special ed students have summer commitments, so there's a higher probability that they'll need the air conditioning.
Yes, all
With
this,
it.
yeah, they all require, usually in the summertime, everybody has an air conditioning fan, yes.
We know we're getting Microtech because they're on state contract?
No.
No. How do we know we're getting Microtech?
No, it's Microbird, it's
Or
just a
Microbird.
different, it's just a different distributor of school bus vans. So we were with Leonard, and we chose to go, we're choosing to try Microbird this time because of their wonderful, I mean, they have a great reputation, they've been building buses since '66.
And I'm not arguing that, I'm
Yep.
just wondering how we don't have to bid these?
They're on state contract.
They are, okay, that's what I asked. Yeah, they are on state contract, so we can just go right off the contract.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
This will be a separate proposition though, so the voters will prove this a separate line item. So we-
Understand, but we should know, if they're on state
Oh,
contract,
absolutely.
we should know what the costs are.
Absolutely.
Okay, we shouldn't have to wait for quote-unquote inflation adjusted. There's a contract that the state has let with them, and they'll deliver at that price.
Yeah, Janet has the cost of all of
Yes.
this.
Yeah, we already have all the prices for all these vans because we had to put in a letter of intent to purchase as long as the budget, as long as the resolution passes on the, in the May vote.
Right. So where is, no cost?
And then I also had to talk to fiscal advisors to get the loan process going and. Okay. So the bus garage budget, we have kept it the same. That is where we pay for the repairs of the actual bus garage, the heat for it, the telephone for it. There's really no changes in that budget.
Author, more like that.
So for the other program budget, there is some BOCES services that had to be increased, and that is that home instruction. Since there's more children going in there and the price is increasing, maybe with that new survey, we will be able to reduce that. We'll see. The other expenses is the school physician that we have, the contract that we have with Columbia Memorial Hospital. They've increased their cost.
Janet, could you just explain a little bit on the home instruction? So for the students that are homeschooled, what, I guess, what that entails?
It goes through BOCES, and they track what
the homeschooling that the parents are doing and make sure everybody is doing the correct thing. So we pay Questar to keep track of that.
So if a parent decides that they want to homeschool, that there are checks and balances along the way?
Yeah.
Through BOCES. Okay, thank you.
Along the same lines, has BOCES ever, quote unquote, rejected a homeschool environment for Greenville students?
So you can't reject it, but they will make sure that all of the documents are filed. And if it's not, then, you know, obviously we reach out to the family if we're not hearing and seeing the information.
Does a homeschool child stand for the same state-based tests?
They can, if they want to take the test, they can come in here and take those tests. They're not required to, no.
So BOCES review is basically that all the paperwork is done, not the quality of the education?
Right, school districts are required to do that. So this is a service that we purchased from BOCES in order to make sure that they are filing all the proper paperwork.
Understand?
Yes.
The quality of education. Nobody stands for that.
Well, we look to make sure that they're doing all of the requirements, yes.
I guess I don't understand. Okay, paperwork is one thing. Requirements are usually based on a, quote, demonstration of a skill set. If we're basically hiring BOCES to go in and make sure that all the paperwork is filed, what does that, and a child can take a test but doesn't have to, how do we know about the quality?
There are some assessments that they are required. So I think it differs by age. I would have to look into it,
Okay.
Duncan, to be specific.
So, I mean, I can speak a little bit to it, is because people will come in and register in our office and ask questions in regard to that. So when they decide they want to, when a parent decides they want to homeschool their child, they receive a packet. And in that packet, they're supposed to have what is called a homeschool plan, making sure that if, I don't know, the kid's in 3rd grade, let's say that they're following the 3rd grade New York State learning standards. And within those standards, they're supposed to have covered X amount of content. So then quarterly, just like a report card kind of thing, they're supposed to submit that documentation to that Questar person. Because there's been times where I have asked for those checklists because I'll have a family that wants to refer a student to special ed, and I would need to see, you know, just like RTI, I would need to see some of that data, and they usually have a checklist saying, okay, yes, they've covered this much content, check the box, and it's part of their homeschool plan. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for.
I'm just,
Trying
that's
to
fine, but
gather.
I guess I've been around here long enough to know that most of the kids that were homeschooled really was religious based. Okay, they wanted to get a different level of instruction, and they were concerned. You know, we were fighting for years to try to let some of those kids play athletics. Okay, and that's still, they still can't participate in that.
A lot of times now, parents are choosing these online homeschool programs
Yeah.
that have everything built in, and there's
Yeah.
online tutors. That's what I've seen in my experience as of late.
I'm fine. I mean, I just wanted to better understand it, and I guess I understand it. It's all the paperwork and whatever. That's what it is. Hopefully the kids get a good education. And I'm hoping that it's done for that reason, okay, to get a good
And
education.
there are times, to that point, that when a student returns, especially a student that has an IEP, if we're noticing, and we have had this happen actually from the pandemic, you know, students have been homeschooled, they've returned, we had to put in compensatory services because there were some things that were missing. They weren't receiving all of their services, so, yeah.
I look at the numbers of increase and I'm wondering, I'm a little concerned that down the line, we're gonna have a lot of kids not ready to do, you know, to be an asset to the community or to themselves.
Next slide. Food service.
So this school year, we've been running under the National School Lunch Program with the Seamless Summer Option Waiver to provide meals by eliminating the need to collect meal payments. So all our students can receive one breakfast and one lunch free every day that the school is open. We do not know what the federal government or the state government's going to do next school year. We shall see. But right now, every month you've been getting profit and loss statements from the cafeteria, and they're doing pretty well because the reimbursement rate is a nice rate. So this year, with some of that profit that they're making, we are anticipating on purchasing an ice machine and a dishwasher for the elementary school kitchen. Does that mean? That's gonna, the total of those two pieces of equipment is $17,000, and the profit right now is about $109,000.
I'm sorry, Janet, ice machine, and what was the other one?
A dishwasher.
Thank you.
Right now, the elementary doesn't have an ice machine. Next slide, the special aid fund. That is the amount that we need to pay towards the summer handicap, the tuition and transportation. General fund has to pay 20% of the cost, and the state pays the other 80%. We've been pretty good with the $65,000, so we anticipate to make no change on that line item either. Tammy.
Okay, we wanted to talk just a little bit about the tax cap calculation. This is actually earlier than we normally discuss it. It's usually next week. But with my timeline, I wanted to at least talk about it tonight. So what is really different also, based on other years, is I really believe the state put out their best and final offer with state aid. So I really think I'm pretty confident with our state aid totals that it's probably what it will be. You don't see anyone, fighting to get more money, that they believe that the state came out with a good package for school districts. So knowing that, I wanted to just talk to the board about what tax cap and what tax levy you would like us to look at. So Janet has this chart here. So really, if you just look at the years, you can see the allowable tax cap. So everyone thinks of it as a 2% tax cap when it's not a 2% tax cap. It is actually a calculation of quite a few different areas, and then it comes up with a calculation of 2%, which is part of that calculation. So just if you look at the first column, that was the allowable tax cap. So what that means is that's how much we could have gone up to and have a budget passed by a simple majority. If we had gone higher than that, we would have needed a 60%. And then if you look to the right, that's the actual tax levy. So that is what we actually went out with. So you can see we really worked hard to keep it under 2%. So the tax cap calculation for the 22-23 school year is coming in at 3.33%. So while it's not our proposal by any means to go out that high, if we look at the budget right now, and based on what you're going to be reviewing next week also, is we're right now at about a 2.35. So that is still just about 1% under what we are allowed to go out with for a simple majority. I guess I just want to talk with the board about what your feelings are, if you think 2.35 is a fair number to work with, or if you think we need to really work this week to bring that down. So that's my question for the board.
In looking at this, I think that obviously it's always a balancing act between the taxpayers and addressing the needs of the students and so forth. One of the things in looking through this budget is summer school. So I noticed that right now the summer school, there is a line item for BOCES. So I'm assuming that is not the summer school that would happen here. That is a separate thing, or?
So right now, it's probably just budgeted under there, and then we will decide. Last year, we did a combination of working with BOCES and doing some things internally.
Okay.
So it's really just that total amount we can use.
Okay,
Either
so
or.
where my question was going is in thinking about summer school and what the learning loss has been over the past 2 years, my question is that an area that actually needs to increase? So if anything, I would not propose cutting or tightening what we have. My question is,
Do we have enough?
do we have enough to address the needs of the students? We know it's multi-year to address it. The learning loss hasn't happened in 3 months, so enough said for me. Anyone else?
What would what'd you say, we're at 2.35 now?
Yes.
What would the difference be if we were 2.5? $1,500.
I'm getting there.
Huh?
She's calculating it quick.
Okay.
And I was just calculating that. The other question that I had on here was that with the really great reading program, and we've gone through and we've trained the special ed students, one of the questions that I have is students that are not in a self-contained classroom, then when they go back to the classroom or after the special ed teacher has gone in, pushed in, and then left, the gen ed class teacher, then do they need some training on the really great reading program? Because ideally, the students were saying vanilla, then when the special ed teacher leaves, then we need to continue saying vanilla. I mean, so is that an area that the budget needs to be reinforced for that? So I'm just throwing out things that I saw.
I can speak to that to buy Janet some time to do her calculations over there. So really great reading, we actually have our special ed teachers and our interventionists trained at the elementary school. Even those that are trained, it'll be an ongoing, using the support of really great reading to make sure we're continually implementing with fidelity and doing all the pieces and growing it. Having the interventionist trained, part of that was they are working with students that aren't in self-contained. Some of those students are not even identified as special ed. It's just the tier 2 and tier 3 students that are also receiving some of those push-in services through the interventionist. Part of that is the classroom teachers then seeing some of that because they're now in a classroom doing that work. But we have also talked about what training would be appropriate for classroom teachers. So they need the full, there are actually 8-hour modules and there's multiple modules. Do they need the full training? No, but what would make most sense for a classroom teacher? We can actually work that into our PD budget that we have for professional development and in-service in the budget already. But absolutely an area that we need to make sure we continually work on having more teachers trained and just up to speed on what that looks like.
And the general ed teachers at the elementary school are very interested in that ongoing PD, because this is already a conversation we're having.
Yep. And I would even challenge some middle school teachers might be interested in, because the 5th graders, when they go up,
yep.
Duncan, you had said something.
Am I hallucinating, or did we have problems getting teachers willing to work summer school last year? It seemed to me we did not have a plethora of teachers who were ready to work summer.
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have any kind of a feeling that we would be able to put on a robust summer school program this year?
I would still probably have concerns about getting a robust program.
Okay.
I think you still have, a lot of, I don't want to say COVID fatigue, but people are tired and,
A lot of fatigue.
Yeah. Well, we are discussing it and looking
Yeah,
at it
it's
and
got an answer, I can see it.
trying to work on things that someone could commit some of their time,
Yeah.
not their whole summer, so that they still have that time to just rejuvenate that they need.
The difference between a 2.35%
Yep.
to a 2.5% is $26,000.
How far would that go to enhance a summer program?
We did not spend what we had in the budget last year, so I first would want to kind of talk with the administrators, what do we see even a robust program looking like, and what's in the budget, is that enough?
Can we put that off to the next meeting then?
Yes, we can look at summer school next Monday.
Let's take a hard look at, I'm agreeing with Tracy here, I think we need to take a hard look at what options we have before we decide.
Okay.
And I'd like to go with as low a rate as possible, but I'd also like to recognize the issues that we know are there. And if we need a robust, my word, a well thought out, well planned summer schedule, which may or may not include BOCES, then I think we really ought to consider that. And I'd like to see those fleshed out, you know.
It'll be on the cabinet's agenda tomorrow.
Sorry, Pete.
We've actually already been discussing it for the last 6 weeks.
No, I think we really have to look at it. And if we could do it,
So if anyone's interested in what the tax cap calculation is, it's in the booklet, the last page. And that had to go to the state today. Not what the tax levy will be, just the tax cap calculation.
So Janet, if increasing 0.15% is approximately 26,000, then, I mean, as we're thinking about it, I assume that any change in 0.15%, 150 basis points about, it's the same value, right? I mean, if you go down by 0.15%, you're going down by 26,000, just so we know kind of approximately what we're talking about here.
I have that. If you want to go down to 2.15?
I'm not suggesting we do. I'm just trying to make sure I understand that if you're saying a change in 0.15% is 26,000, then I think that would be true in either direction, where you could double it in either direction, and it would be 26 times 2 or something, right?
That's math.
Yeah, I'm just making sure that was
Says the engineer.
Thank you, Eric. It couldn't be right. If I didn't think clearly, I would have just asked, does math work that simply?
sometimes you gotta direct the lawyer, you know, he's like,
Yeah,
give
those
a
lawyers.
Thank you, thank you. So I don't have a suggestion about the budget, but just something to pile on the concern about, you know, I have no doubt that, for example, the needs for the preschool kids coming in needing special education services is covered. But if there's any, I mean, to the other concerns were said, if there's any other area where you think it might be tight given needs coming out of the pandemic that might need to be addressed, I think I'd like to understand that too.
And I have a question, and it's just so I can think about it, but how much was the late bus cost? Was it 35?
37.
37?
That's salaries, benefits, gas, fuel, you know, that's the whole cost.
Janet, Tammy, I have a question. You want us to focus on a number, for what purpose? There's only one component of the budget left. What would we be calculating beyond? Or if we came to a recommendation tonight, what would you be using that number toward?
Well, that is based on us actually knowing right now, she might make some more adjustments, where we stand next week too. So I'm obviously looking at my small time frame left and looking to see, you know, if you really said it can't be more than 2%, then Janet and I would be looking at where we're either going to use more fund balance or we're going to reduce some areas.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with this range, we're going to keep moving forward with it.
So you want to have it almost wrapped up by next?
That was my hope.
Despite my colleagues, I'm trying to look at a more global perspective. And, you know, some of the people we heard from expressed more personal concerns with finances. So I'm wondering what the balance point or tipping point is as far as that number goes. I certainly would like to cover all the educational expenses, but not just put money in. I think there's plenty of money in this budget, $33 million for a school this size, to get what we need done. So I don't know about spending more than what is suggested, my point of view.
I kind of agree with Dave that I was thinking the 2.35 is high enough. I was going, why can't it be 2.25? I think we can shuffle in the pots that are there. I know that it'd be nice to go up to 2.5, you know, or something higher, but a lot of people are still suffering economically locally.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend going higher than what we were
So if
suggesting.
we stay at 2.35 as a cap, for me, that would be okay. I mean, I'd like to get it down to 2.25.
Tammy, we have some unsettled business still. Is there money calculated in this budget for that?
Yes.
I think though, to the questions about whether there are areas where, you know, more support might be needed for some, I think like Tracy's concern and Duncan's, having an answer would still be helpful, because we could always look at it from the perspective of, we think that a particular area might need more funding to support the need, but we want to keep the overall number at this 2.3, no greater than the recommended budget amount. That would mean something else needs to give, right? So there's at least two moving parts there.
And I think I'm comfortable still with the amount of money that we have under federal stimulus, specifically for the purpose of helping learning loss. So we have still quite a bit of money under tutoring, that if we needed to direct that to other needs in that area. So I really don't think we're I'm saying the wrong word, not doing well by our students for learning loss. I think with the federal stimulus and what we have in this budget is taking care of those needs. So I'm definitely not asking to put more money in it.
Tammy, are we looking at a similar amount at the end of this year for carryover into next year?
For the federal stimulus?
No, for our own budget as far as
the fund balance that we've
yeah.
been, yes. I think Janet brought it down just a little bit. So about the same
because
amount.
of spending or
I didn't hear
spending this year that we incurred?
Yeah, so spending, yes, we will have the same amount, if not a little bit more left at this year.
Okay.
So you're still gonna give us something by next week about what kind of a program we could have using
For summer
this
school?
money or whatever?
Yeah, we'll come to you with some kind of
Good.
proposals of what we're looking at. And whether that, the funding that we have is
I
enough.
don't wanna spend any more than we need to.
Yeah, I think we have enough.
All right.
Mhm. Okay, that was good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the last slide is about the future meetings. So next week, Monday, we'll discuss the capital and the administrative budget, and again, the revenues to make sure how comfortable you are with everything. And then April 11th is the tentative budget adoption. May 3rd is the annual budget hearing, and then the 17th is the vote. And that's about it. Any other questions?
I just had a question, it's more for you, Pete. In the May 17th, in the past, prior to COVID, we have had the activity night. Is it in the plan to have that for the night of the vote?
Oh, I will check with our Caring Kids program to see if they're able to coordinate together this year. And something that they've always loved doing when we haven't had a conversation, we have had conversations about other events returning them. You're referring to the picnic on the green?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Just throw it in.
Thank you very much. This was a very informative presentation. We appreciate it. We appreciate you answering all of our questions, and we do have quite a few of them. So thank you very much. It's apparent that a lot of work and thought went into it, and I think I speak on everyone's behalf when I say thank you for doing that. So then, moving back to the agenda for the action item 4.1, which is to approve the mask resolution. I'm going to actually read it. So, whereas New York State currently has a mask mandate requirement in place for public school districts, and such mandate may be discontinued as of Wednesday in the near future as a result of either voluntary discontinuance by the state or court action, and whereas the Board of Education will continue to abide by the legal mask mandate so long as it exists but wishes to provide clarity on what its position will be when and if the mask mandate no longer exists. It is hereby resolved by the Board of Education of the Greenville Central School District that, upon the legal mandate by New York State for the wearing of masks by staff, students, and visitors in public schools ceasing to exist, the school district will follow a mask optional policy for staff, students, and visitors, allowing each individual and/or student, parent, guardian to make the determination of whether to wear a mask in school based on their own choice. However, in the event that any new lawful directive or conditions are issued, any such choice must be consistent with any new legal requirement that may be issued. This resolution shall not apply to or affect the requirement that all staff and students wear masks while on school district transportation, for example, buses, as that is a requirement under federal law, so long as federal mandate remains in place. Visitors and students are reminded that the Code of Conduct requires all students and visitors to comply with lawful order and directives of the state and the district. Failure to do so can result in a discipline for students and visitors being asked to leave school property. I need a motion to approve this mask resolution.
I have Duncan and Angela, thank you.
Okay, any discussion?
I have a question, Tracy. With the governor's mask mandate, there wasn't, and even updates on it, there was an expiration date. So I asked Tammy or Jeff, how do we know when this expires?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Right, when you say that it expires.
When are we, if COVID continues to improve to a point where it's non-existent, or someone determines that we don't even need an optional mask mandate or program, how do we expire this resolution? Because 5 years ago, I would think that if someone walked around with a mask on in school, and I'm pro-mask, I'm not even being devil's advocate, I want to know when this would end. If someone walked around with a mask on, they'd probably get in trouble because of varied reasons. I'm just thinking, to make it even easier, maybe we should throw a date on there or something, where we have to update it, or maybe not.
Well, one of the things is, for example, in the Code of Conduct, it is written in such a way that we just follow what is required by the Department of Health. So if 5 years from now, then there is something else, and then the state requires schools, then it would be fine. If, when we review the Code of Conduct annually, if we see that it's not necessary, then elements are eliminated continuously. So would this resolution I mean, it's kind of tied into what the state does and to the code of conduct. So changes in both of those, which are reviewed annually, would cover it. That's my thinking. But I'm not a lawyer.
Everybody turns and looks at Jay.
No, I'm looking at Jeff.
I'm looking at Jeff.
I'm looking at Jeff too.
Oh, Jeff.
I'm looking at you. Then I propose it as a question, that's all.
If we get to that situation, where in fact the governor makes a pronouncement that what she said 2 nights ago is no longer in effect, then I guess we could put a motion on the floor to rescind this resolution. Okay.
Right, you wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, and that's, but until she does, this covers it, and I wouldn't want to put a date on this because I don't know if she's going to make any further action.
Well, I don't either, right? I don't know if she has put herself in a position where she's just said that it's up to local district. And I'm gonna have no more input on it.
Right, I guess I'm not sure what the concern is. I mean, I guess to your point, if there was an issue under the code of conduct or some other reason why walking around with a mask when there's no mandate or whatever could be problematic, I don't know, I guess we could discuss that, but otherwise, I think it just kind of goes away. I mean, unless there's something under the code of conduct that, again, is the reason why you don't want to, in pre-pandemic normal, don't want to have someone wearing a mask. I mean, we should talk about that, but otherwise, if it's now optional, I don't know, maybe even like next flu season, someone wants to wear a mask because they just want to try to avoid the flu. Do we care about that or not? Like, I don't know, but otherwise, if there's another mandate for any reason, whether because there's another breakout or something else comes down the road, then I think we have to follow that. And otherwise, maybe at some point we just look at this and say it's kind of irrelevant now. We can expire it. I don't know. But I guess it's a rambling way of saying I think unless there's a, to your point about there being concern under the code of conduct with wearing the mask, if there's no like obvious health reason to do it, absent that, I don't think it doesn't seem problematic to me to have it like hanging out in the background.
Any other discussions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the bid award for the 2021-2022 surplus chairs. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Tammy, if you could provide us with a COVID update, please.
Sure, so this really is based on what transpired this weekend. As everyone knows, CDC came out with updated guidelines late on Friday, and we heard from the governor yesterday, and starting Wednesday, March 2nd, the mask mandate is lifted, and we have already now just said that it will be optional here for both faculty, staff, and our students. So we have one more day with the mandate in place. The good news is the transportation has also gone away for private and public schools, so we don't have to enforce it in one area and not in the other, so that is a blessing. So effective Wednesday, it will be optional, and we will just be teaching respect both ways so that students respect each other's choices, and same with faculty and staff. But we're waiting, hopefully, the big thing is that they're working on the guidance, because what does this mean with all the other mitigation strategies? So that is what we're waiting for. Are there going to be any changes with any social distancing, any required testing? So that is what we're waiting for right now. When I know it, everyone will know.
And I was thinking particularly for the younger students, are there discussions what would be appropriate or anything? Because there could be students that all of a sudden are like, well, what's going on? So
So we actually, in our planning meeting last night, we began discussing some of this, and Last night, we had the elementary PPS team, for example, met with myself first thing this morning so that we could begin talking about some of our students only know masks and what is that experience for them. And also, and because all of our students bring multiple perspectives to this, but it's a big change. And so we met this morning and we, for example, our plan for tomorrow was, first of all, I opened up a forum today for any faculty or staff member to share questions that they have so that we could consider this from all perspectives. Then we had a quick faculty meeting today to kind of walk through those about what we know already and what we don't know yet and try to answer those questions. So for tomorrow morning, an example, our morning message for kids is about, there's been a big change, and right now it's beginning on Wednesday. This is all about everyone being able to make their own choice. And we talked about the importance of choice, and so in the morning message that kids will review with their teachers in the morning, that'll be talking about that and how we should continue to be smart and strong by showing respect for other people and the choices that they make and how that we're still friends even when someone makes choices that are different from the ones that we would make. And so we said you'll see some people wearing masks and that's fine and that's their choice, and some people not wearing masks and that's fine, that's the choice that's right for them. And so we continue to show respect for each other throughout that process. Later on in the morning, we'll be sharing a slide deck that we created that every teacher can go over the same teaching points, reinforcing that message about what the rule used to be, what the change is, and how we can show respect for each other. And then if you have questions, we really want you to talk to your parents because they're going to help you figure out what choices work for you. And so that's going to be going out to all the students tomorrow and for teachers to talk through. And I discussed that with the faculty today. And then we have a parent letter that will also go home saying, hey, we had a great day at school on Tuesday. Here's what we discussed with your students. Please talk to your child so that they feel comfortable with the choices that you're making as a family so that they can feel prepared for Wednesday. And so that's how we're beginning that process at the elementary school.
Thank you.
I have one question, but that's excellent. Thank you for that, Pete. I hope you encourage your teachers to spend extra time on it instead of trying to rush through it. Before I came down here after the celebration for Tammy, I was listening to the Albany superintendent, and she had questions about if a student tests positive, are the quarantine rules still going to be in place? She was wondering this, and also, because currently the recommendation or I guess part of that mandate is they quarantine for 5 days if they're healthy, non-symptomatic. She was wondering about the portion that said they have to wear a mask on their return. So you're still waiting for guidance on that?
We are waiting for guidance, so that was discussed, we had a superintendent's meeting this morning too, and that was a question that someone else brought up too.
So what will, before that guidance, unless that guidance comes out tonight or tomorrow night,
right?
You'll have to follow what's in existence, right?
So, yeah, well, what does it mean? Does it mean that that counts still because of the masks mandate being lifted? I'm not sure what side that is on. So, but I will check with our nurses to see if we have anyone that falls into that category right now too, that's in school, that will be in school.
Yeah. Okay, that's it.
There's lots of little pieces to this.
So the open forum, the 30-minute open forum is the time that the board sets aside to hear in-person comments from the public. Comments may also be emailed in advance of the meeting prior to 4 p.m. on the date of the meeting and state in the email that you would like your correspondence read out loud to Daphne Pearson, District Clerk at pearsond@greenvillecsd.org. This is an opportunity for residents to voice general concerns and compliments, particularly about the items on the agenda. So since this is a budget workshop, I would expect most of it to be about the budget. However, this is not the time to register complaints about the specific individuals or about items that should be addressed confidentially through the proper channels. All comments shall be addressed to the district clerk and shall be limited to no more than 5 minutes per board policy 2180. Please note that members of the board may not be able to directly respond to citizens' concerned during the public open forum. Are there any individuals that would like to speak? Do we have a microphone there?
Oh, I don't use them.
You do, Carrie, only because we're being taped, so
Oh,
they
great.
can't hear you.
Okay. Good evening, Carrie Caputi, currently the instructional math coach. I first want to just say I appreciate the presentation. It's a lot of work. It's extremely informative. So I just appreciate all of the discussion as well. What I would like to do, because I am very invested in not only the school district, but also programming, is highlight K-5 math programming and make sure that we are looking at, in our long-term planning, making sure that we have all the supports that should be in place. So when we talk about, and much of this goes along with the discussion I heard from you this evening. So for instance, after school help, during the day, and then also summer school. So we know, right, that math is a cumulative subject, and it is a challenging curriculum that changed about 10 or so years ago. And all roads lead to algebra, and that starts in kindergarten. So we also know that with summer school that you mentioned, summer slide is actually more so with math than it is in reading. So are we looking at long-term where we really need to look at? Sometimes we sort of jump to 6 through 12 and we don't spend enough time looking at all of the components needed for that foundation. So I heard about the communication specialist, which is deja vu, because yes, we had a communication specialist in-house and then through Questar, and we lost it in lean budget times. What we've also lost in lean budget times were after-school math help groups at every grade level, K through 5. And we lost those a good decade ago before the curriculum changed to this challenging one. And what I've been waiting to hear year in and year out is some type of plan to bring that level of support back. Now, it may look different, right? The last 2 years have presented different opportunities of looking at providing different supports. So it may not look like it did back then, but we only offer a couple extra help groups. They are, one of them is a combination, math ELA. That does not work, I'll be frank. And secondly, we're depending upon teachers using it for their tuition waiver choice. What I'm saying is we need to take a hard look at working into the budget long-term that layer of support that we had, but we haven't had in a very long time. Again, that might look different. It might look like some type of tutoring. It might change. But we don't have that, and we really need to take a look at that. Secondly, during the school day, so I think we have done tremendous work. I get emotional because I'm so passionate about K-5 math and programming. But we have done such an amazing job with programming the math intervention program for the last 4.5 years. And that's new. Prior to 4.5 years ago, I would say math intervention had its moments. It was coupled with reading. It was never K-5. So we have done a huge amount of work in a very small amount of time. But I noticed that some long-term decisions seem to have been made with the social worker and the extra speech-language pathologist, that you will be looking at working that into the general fund. I would say you need 2 math interventionists minimally at Ellis. You cannot service a K-5 building with one. So I would encourage you to look at bringing that second math interventionist into the general fund. And then lastly, summer school, hugely important. However, it may not look like traditional summer school. So possibly, as COVID has opened our eyes, there may be other opportunities like that layer of support for after school to also replicate during the summer that would give everybody more flexibility. But those three pieces really need to be looked at long term. So, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie. I think I saw another hand. If you could just come to the podium and state your name. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Kelly Wolf. I was here at the previous couple board meetings. Just a few not concerns, just questions, really follow-up questions. Actually, I came in a little bit later, and we were talking about the bus routes. I just wanted to offer my perspective on it, I guess, and like the late bus. Instead of like minimizing routes, possibly, let's look at the numbers like pre-pandemic and try and encourage these kids, now that we're kind of coming out of it, to get involved in these after-school programs and utilize these buses instead of cutting them. Since we're already there, they're already budgeted, you know. What can we do for the kids to get them more involved? That was just like a side thing. Okay, so hooray, heroes, we did it, right? Sort of. Wednesday, choice, we're here. That's really exciting. My kindergartner is ecstatic about it. Today was his first day back, and of course we had an hour and a half before school of tantrums and crying and not wanting to come to school whatsoever. But once he got here, it's like working out, you know. He got over it, and he's had a great day. His teacher updated me throughout the day and was like, we're going strong, we're good. So it was a great day. But what else are we doing? Are we opening up the doors again? Like, I missed a lot of my kids, you know, things that are in the classroom. But we still have a decent amount of the school year left. Can we open the doors to parents and just kind of go back to pre-pandemic? I don't know, I'm sure there's more regulations, updates that are coming from, you know, higher ups. But I just wanted to know, you know, what are the plans in place as far as no masking as far as this point? Opening the doors, the teachers testing, do they still need to test?
Right now, the regulation is unvaccinated still have to test.
Right.
I checked on that today.
And there's no future date for that to come off?
No, I hope to hear of a date, but
Okay.
as of today's check-in, no.
And as far as letting parents back into the classrooms and stuff and getting more parent involvement, do we have any updates on that?
I know Mr. Mahan is starting to meet with his teachers and teams about starting to do some evening activities and then starting to get parents back in, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Great. And then the last meeting, there was a lot of things said, but there was a lot of concerning things for me to hear that I didn't hear before. And I know there's a lot of confidentiality that has to take place, but I was just wondering, those teachers that, you know, crossed the line, were they ever spoken to, reprimanded? Did we ever get that child, I guess if you say justice, or the couple children that were, you know, not treated fairly? Was that addressed at all, or did we just swish that one?
So all I can say is that's a personnel item that I'm not allowed to talk about. But I would just say that concerns were heard.
Did the teachers hear the concerns?
I would just say personnel that I'm not allowed to discuss in public.
I feel like that would be something public, because there might be some other parents that are also concerned that's happening to their child. So,
I would say if you know of a concern that we don't know about, to have them reach out to one of the building principals or myself.
okay. I'm just making sure I have everything down here. And then, this is so random, and you're gonna kill me for this, but in one of the previous meetings, there was a discussion about getting central air in the building. Did that ever get approved or anything? Is there any update on that?
That did not get approved yet.
Really? I feel like air circulation is like really, could be really beneficial.
That was
Okay.
extremely expensive, multi-millions.
I'm not gonna say anything.
So, but it's still being looked at, but the capital project has not been put together yet.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in open forum? Then I would like to take a minute and thank you, Tammy, in an official way. So there is a card floating around over there. Yes.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
And everybody.
So Tammy, from the bottom of our heart, when I say thank you just doesn't cut it. You have dedicated years, you have dedicated yourself to Greenville, to the students, to faculty. We are so appreciative. We have benefited from everything that you have done. As you go off and you retire, you're going to need a hobby. So we were thinking, in fact, we were asking, well, does Tammy have a hobby? And nothing came to mind. So as you start thinking about all the different things that you can do, may we offer one possible option?
Is it a puzzle?
It could be, yes, that you can enjoy. And also, you never took the bonus that was offered to everyone else. So each of us personally contributed something on a gift card so that you can try many different hobbies and then decide which one you want. You may go with gardening, who knows, in which case come over to my garden because I hate gardening. But thank you, Tammy, from the bottom of our heart. Thank you. So now I need a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss employment of a particular person or persons. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone.